if you want. I like the way you wrote his name vertically as it's supposed to be. It's nice.
Yeah, yeah. So Ai Weiwei is a very controversial Chinese artist. Let me check. Here is the the picture I choose to represent him as a man. So he was born on the 28th of August from a poet father. Also controversial, as it's written here, he has been reported during the cultural revolution and has been exiled in the Xinjiang region, and there Ai Weiwei will grow until he goes to study film school in Beijing, the Film Academy. With I don't know these film directors, but I read that they were famous. And in 1981, he leaves China for the United States, where he will study at Berkeley and Parsons School of Design. So he didn't. I don't believe he studied architecture. He studied design or something. And I named him the archivist because I read about him militating for human rights, fighting the authorities for the rights of the artists. He also, in the beginning of the 70s, he invested in different artistic and literary groups as stars and today. And he also created some associations that protected the artists, that the new artists at that moment. In 1994, with Feng Boy, he starts this publications. The first volume is called Black Cover Book. It's a modern art treaty that defends his political convictions, as he was fighting for democracy instead of communism in China. And he persisted in these publications with the white cover book in 1995 and the gray cover book. These books were published, but they were never sold in China. You couldn't buy them, you couldn't find them or borrow them. As he bothered a lot the Chinese government. In 2018, his studio has been demolished, and here are some things that he said. It took 2 years to build and 1 day to tear down, and that he called the officials, who told him that if the studio is to be taken down, it doesn't matter if it's sooner or later. But there were still some work of his and of other artists that he had taken under his wing inside. So it was a big loss, and yeah, people manifested after that for him. And I also saw this thing that he were doing, that he was taking dinner in the street with people that appreciated him, and police came to send them away because it was known that if you're taking dinner with Ai Weiwei, you're on his side and you're an enemy for the government. There is this documentary about him. It is called Never Sorry. These are images from the demolition of his studio. His name, he's also named the godfather of the Chinese avant-garde, and in 1997 he started this series of exhibitions, The Art of Destruction, Here is an image with him dropping an urn from the Han Dynasty. And he did, as he was called also the Andy Warhol of China, he did this kind of work on a Neolithic vase. And when someone asked him if he thinks that he ruined the object, he said no. And after that, he asked him if he thinks that he made a better work of art painting this object. He also said no. So it's quite interesting. He had the guts to do this. Here is him painting these artifacts. And he said something like, the tradition and the memory are means of expression that allow us to understand our resistance and our limits. So he was using artifacts or as materials to make new works of art. And every critic, every article about his, even the positive ones, used words as vandalism and defaced in order to address his work. These are chairs from another, from the same exhibition, the same Art of Destruction. These are chairs from the Qing Dynasty, which was in China from 1636 until 1912. These are his perspective studies. He had a series of photos like this. There is one with 10 men. And actually it became like an icon, this image, because after that random people adopted his idea, and they were taking photographies with this gesture in different situations. He also made some movies with all the dialects spoken in China, asking people to say fuck the government, or no, fuck the motherland, or something like that. And he also appears in one of these movies saying it. I think it cost him a lot. I read this, and I believe, I don't know why someone said it, the artist who couldn't wait to quit architecture because he only started to approach it in 2003. Also, he said that he doesn't like curves apart those from the human body. So his constructions are very square. Although the bird's nest, in collaboration with Herzog and de Meuron, I think it's his biggest project. I couldn't find how much he contributed to this, but I believe its form, or I don't know, the idea of a bird's nest. Maybe it belongs to Ai Weiwei. Yeah, it is 50,000 tons of steel stadium, named after one of the world top 10 constructions in 2007, and became a landmark for the Olympics, and a symbol of a symbol for Beijing. It's very interesting and impressive, as it was constructed in order to fulfill it was constructed around for the people, ensuring optimum view, comfortable seats, in order for them to enjoy the maximum of the sport events. These are images from the construction. This is the interior. I think it's really impressive the way the beams are and the scale of it, and even the light and the colors. I think it's a nice. I think it's a nice construction, as nice as the stadium can be. This is an image from the interior to maintain the atmosphere and provide a superb stadium experience. The roof was clad with ethyl tetrafluoroethylene panels. I don't really know what this material is, but I think it's something that is translucent, because we can see on the both sides the structure through them. On the upper face, and an acoustic membrane on the lower face. Spectator sideline are different sporting activities were important to design. So I believe they really thought about it, how to make a great experience for these Olympic Games for the people. After that, in 2012, he contributed also with Herzog and de Meuron at the Serpentine Pavilion. This quote, what they did was a kind of a homage to all the other pavilions, and this is the plan of it. Quite interesting. The base of the structure descends beneath the lawn of Kensington Gardens, where the soil has been removed to reveal the imagined foundations of previous pavilions built on this site. And these are the drawings. First one, it's footprints as topography. The second one, traces of preview pavilions. The third one, excavated foundations. The topography and the foundations. Cuts for the circulation. Extrusion of fragments. I didn't understand. There is another image, but I couldn't understand where are the 11 columns that are symbolizing the 11 pavilions that were before the 12th. This one, the Serpentine, that Weiwei and Herzog and de Meuron constructed. 12 specific columns. I believe they are here. And the landscape. So these are another sketches. The top is kind of a pool. It's a water surface. The top of this pavilion. This is quite kind of a section. So here it's written 11 columns characterizing each past pavilion, and 12 column representing the current structure, supporting a floating platform roof 1.5 meters above the ground. The pavilion interior was clad in cork, a sustainable building material chosen for its unique qualities and to echo the excavated earth. Taking an archaeological approach, the architects rated a design that inspired visitors to look beneath the surface of the park, as well as back in time across the ghosts of the earlier structures. So I think it's full of symbols. This is the way it looked. It was written, explore the hidden history of previous pavilions. It's quite interesting. And the light and the material that he used, and the surface of the ceiling that is the same of the surface of the water above this. So this is how it looked, the Serpentine. He also did this intervention in Chaochangdi, Beijing, which was a village that developed very, very fast. I think if I'm right, it went from 1 million to 12 million in a very short lap of time. And he says, for this, he said, personally, I take inspiration from local places and from local people, mostly poor people or people who don't think about architecture, the aesthetic quality of the cheap, the necessary, whatever does with the limit means are essential qualities of the architecture. And this one is an intervention he did by himself, because I couldn't find information like he collaborated with some architects or something. This is the gray brick courtyard. Just a second. So the gray brick courtyard, there are three areas in this art village. Certainly, the architecture of this project does not show the richness of many institutional buildings developments through China. No shining glass, no technological facade, no imported stone, nor wood, no monumental building sizes. It reflects his conceptual sentence, make it simple. So this is the red brick gallery, which is a set of red volumes built in red brick with concrete structure. The plan of these galleries is animated by shifting the walls of the building in diagonal, opening to large common squares and closing into very narrow passages and hidden courtyards. This is an image of one of the courtyards. I think there are many of them because it seemed really big and kind of like a maze. And there is this Three Shadows Photographic Center. I believe that this is the most interesting one. He created the treatment of the walls. I really like that. By shifting the bricks in 3 layers of 6 centimeters, the light produces 3 shadows, creating an interesting movement on the vertical surfaces. He applied this on the floor at the exterior, and I heard that in the interior as well, but I couldn't find images from the interior. But I believe this way to use bricks, it's really nice and interesting, and it really produces the image of an ancient ruin, like many says, a sort of dematerialization of the hard surface. So these are images from this art village and the Three Shadow Photography Center. He also had an installation once again with Herzog and de Meuron. I think it came as a response to the fact that at one point, at one moment in his life, he, because of his activity and the way he expresses himself in art and his activity in general, he had been locked down by the government. I think he had been kind of home arrested or something, and under surveillance for some time. So the idea of this installation that is in that was in Drill Park Avenue is to highlight the expensive invasion of privacy the society endures nowadays. Visitors were invited to roam the place, which was enveloped in darkness. Moreover, the people were also subjected to surveillance and tracking by drones and motion sensors. So it was a pavilion, as I could understand, where they were. There was this floor with many sensors, and there were cameras all over, and people couldn't see anything, but they were surveyed. And on this floor, we can see that there are images that appear in function of the movements the people were making. I don't know if they registered as well. I think it's quite interesting, and it's called Hansel and Gretel, like in the Grimm Brothers story. He also did this Jinhua architecture park and called Ruins of an Alternate Future. Critics said the impression is that you stumbled on the remains of some future society. I couldn't really understand if all the pavilions, apart the one made by Herzog and de Meuron, are made by him or other architects, because I couldn't find the information. But this is the map of the Jinhua Architecture Park. This is his intervention is the archive gallery, I think it's called. This red one is called the reading room, and it belongs to Herzog and de Meuron. And the other is just a path, a kind of a maze with alleys and stuff. And the one in the left, I couldn't find who's the author of it. For his work, is the one who weathered the best, because it's made from concrete, and he used only one material. People say the concrete form stands in proud contrast to the other decaying pavilions, foolishly made of more than one material. From one end, the elevation is an ideal profile of farmhouse or a primitive hut in overgrown grassland. Moving clockwise around the building, you see the profile extrude and elongate into an industrial shed. Yeah, I don't know why images switched, but this was the order. So this one is the first impression, and after that, when we move clockwise, we see also this excavation and the fact that it is not a simple shape at all. He also did some housing. This Thai residence that was built for 2 art collectioners. 4 equal-sized boxes are built a simple wood construction covered with corrugated metal panels on the outside and wood and gypsum panels on the inside. This one is the guest house for the Thai residence. It has only 3 elements: a bedroom, a workroom, and a gallery. This one is are the plans for the Thai residence. I'm sorry, I don't know why this is happening. My slides shifted. These are the plans, the floor plan of the Thai residence, like this one. Underneath, it is based on a traditional country house, only partially organized. Organization of the room is a direct consequence of the rigid form. These are some images from the interior of the Thai residence. I like that. Seems nice, but quite precious. I mean, with all that wood and because I'm saying this because I read that there is not much furniture because the costs were really high. So this is why there is almost no furniture in this house, because it was already very expensive. These are images from the interior of the guest house of the Thai residence. Up we have the gallery, the art gallery, the living room, and there must be another one with the bedroom, but as I said, something happened with my site. I think this one I like the best. It is a project for the Ruta del Pellegrino in Mexico. It's a 117 kilometer long pilgrimage route that people are taking since the 17th century, and each structures provide a shelter and the landmark. Sorry for that. This was the plan of the house before. I really don't know what happened here. And elevations. So yeah. This is the intervention. This is the object that Weiwei designed for the Ruta del Peregrino. It's a panoramic view point. It looks like this. It's I think, yeah, it's made of local materials, I believe, stone from there, and I couldn't find much about the meaning. I don't know, explanation. Why does it look like that? What faces this structure? What's the perspective? Why is oriented this way? I believe there are reasons for that, but I think it's really nice the way it looks. And yes, that was it. Yeah, I'm done.
Do you want to start now from the last slide towards the first one?
No, I was trying to understand what happened because it's a PDF presentation, and when it's PDF, it doesn't mashes inside anything.
Anyway, Diana, don't ruin your presentation, which was excellent. You can do this at home, to try to discover the reason,
okay.
The mess. But the mess sometimes is good. Last year in September, I think, before the school started, there was an American professor who came to Bucharest, and she wanted to give a lecture with the title "Mess is More." So let's welcome Mess. It was very, very nice, your presentation, better than I would have done it. Especially about Ai Weiwei, because first, because I didn't know enough about him, and second, because I'm suspicious of anyone related to Andy Warhol and to a certain kind of positioning in the field of art. But I think he's very refreshing. And it's amazing, a country which has the reputation of being so restrictive. Here we have an artist, an avant-garde artist, who didn't even have the right to signature, who didn't study architecture, and he built a lot. How do you explain it in a very restrictive China? So obviously what we think of China is only partially true. Anyway, he obviously had a special destiny or fate because he studied in the United States before the the transition to capitalism. So obviously he was highly connected. Not too many Chinese before the breakdown of communism flew to the States to study at Berkeley and Parsons School of Design. But good for him. Maybe his father being the most important Chinese contemporary poet, if I understood correctly.
Yes.
Because China does respect its poets. China, this, in a way, dubious country, sorry for using this word, dubious, actually has a high respect for poets, much more than America does. I met in the United States poets who didn't know who won the last Nobel Prize in poetry, and because they were very depressed and very, nobody cares about poets, except the poet laureate of the United States, officially recognized. But in China, they still value scholars because they even had emperors who were scholars, and emperors who expressed themselves through calligraphy, or emperors who wrote poetry. And something I think was transmitted to this day, even in, as I call them, dubious times. Anyway, I truly thank you, Diana. And, if anyone wants to say something, please do so. Otherwise, as I said, I prepared a surprise for you. I start a new series called Cultural Conjunctions. And in this presentation that I will make next, I will talk a little bit about Goethe, who was born today, then about the father of American landscape architecture, Olmsted, who built, if we can say, built the Central Park, the Great Park in Manhattan, and Prospect Park in Brooklyn. Then I will show an unbelievable church built by Friez Votruba, who died on the 28th of August. And I will end with a speech by Martin Luther King, who on the 28th of August in 1963, in a very powerful and emotional way, invited all of us to fight for equality, for justice, and so on. So there will be Goethe, Olmsted, Votruba, and Martin Luther King, brought together by the fact that this day, the 28th of August, was important in their lives. But before I do that, maybe some of you or someone from you would like to say something about Ai Weiwei. Or to ask Diana questions, I don't know. And as I promised, after the cultural conjunction, intermezzo, I will talk about mad architects, also from China, to demolish the myth that China is a very restrictive society. Actually, China at this point is the most experimental country in the world in the field of architecture. It has problems, yes, but it elevated itself from a poor country to a, maybe something is even the most powerful economy in the world, and if not the most, in the second place. So anyway, we are dealing with an unbelievable achievement in a matter of a few years, essentially. So if no one wants to say anything about or discuss with Diana about Ai Weiwei, I can begin my presentation about Goethe, Olmsted, Votruba, and Martin Luther King. It's your decision. Okay, if no one says anything, that I'll begin, okay? Unless, Diana, you want to add something else to what you already presented?
No, I don't know because I don't really know if Ai Weiwei still lives or something. I heard that in 2011 he disappeared.
No, no,
And
he's fine. This is the kind of man who disappears from time to time, but he's
you
fine.
know, and after that I saw that he made last year he made this film documentary about region of Wuhan and coronavirus, and it's called Coronation. I couldn't watch it, but
Well, you know, I'm glad in a way that you said you added what you added, because my feeling is that essentially, or maybe not essentially, but he's a cynic. He's a cynic just as Andy Warhol was a cynic. And it's a time of cynicism. People like, you know, can you believe it? Andy Warhol was compared to Jesus. I read an essay, an American, North American essay about Andy Warhol being compared with Jesus Christ. I mean, this is the kind of world we live in. Ai
I couldn't go
Weiwei,
that far.
well, Ai Weiwei has obvious qualities, but you know, to connect COVID with the coronation is again, you know, pushing a little bit.
Yeah, I think he's very sarcastic,
Well,
and this
yes,
is what
sarcastic, but easy for him to be sarcastic.
but
Anyway,
it wasn't. I don't believe it was really easy for him because I watched the other documentary, Never Sorry, and during some um, uh, fights, I don't know, manifestations in the street, there were images with him bleeding all over the face, and the fact that he had the guts to break that Han Dynasty vase. And when someone asked him, "How come you are so fearless?" he said, "No, I'm not fearless. I have a fearful heart. But if no one does anything, no one says anything, nothing will ever happen."
Diana, let's not be naive. This man has high privileges. He had them before the revolution. Again, I don't know of any Chinese who went to the States to study at Berkeley and the Parsons School of Design. He is doing things there because, you know, he's the exception which confirms the rule. He's allowed to do things. I know of cases of two journalists who disappeared just because they did much less outrageous things in relation with the coronavirus crisis. So I think he's allowed to, you know, act out, and he's the right man for this. I'm not saying he does have qualities, obviously, and he's interesting and he's provocative, and we need people like him. But I also think he is in some kind of a collaboration with the regime. Otherwise, he would have disappeared for good. But anyway, this is my opinion. I could be wrong, and I do not know. But again, we need the avant-garde. We need the provocations. We need people like him. The more, the better, all over the world, because they provoke these. By the way, did you notice the word in Diana's presentation, defacing? You know, she used this word at one moment. So I thought, let's launch a counterpart to Facebook called defacebook, because I do believe Facebook is false. Facebook is full of sweeties, full of sweet little things that do not tell the whole truth about life. And we can very well create you know, I don't know how to call it, a parallel, you know, website or whatever it is, call it whatever it is, but call the Facebook, not Facebook, the Facebook, where you take off the mask, take off the face, and look behind it. This is an idea I had some time ago, but I don't have the knowledge how to fight with Mr. Sugar Mountain and to create an alternative, you know, site, because I do have a problem with Facebook. I know that people cannot breathe without Facebook these days. But I will tell you that just a few months ago, I sent to a friend of mine who displays on Facebook some of my invitations to the Zoom meetings, and it was about I forgot if it was about Hiroshima, but I sent a picture from Hiroshima after 1945, and it was rejected by Facebook on the grounds that, as they said to my friend, because I don't use Facebook, it is an indecent picture. This is how they called it, an indecent picture, as they would call a picture from, you know, a porno picture, you know, a picture with dead bodies because of the atomic bomb. They called indecent, and they froze the website, the Facebook account of my friend for 24 hours. You know, this was the punishment for telling the truth. So I don't trust Facebook, and I don't trust Mr. Sugar Mountain. So let's do a de-Facebook. Anyway, let me start now with Goethe, something more pleasant, and with Olmsted, a great, great, great landscape, the father of American landscape. And then let's go to, I think, a very interesting church, and he, at least Bogdan, knows what I'm talking about, the Votruba church, because he died on this day. And then we'll talk about I Have a Dream of Martin Luther. So let me see. Do I have to active? Yes, just a second. So I thought to start today. I am doing it a little bit for some time, but this time I want to do it more in a more organized way, to start a series. And I invite anyone here, a series called Cultural Conjunctions, which tries to bring together apparently disjointed, disjuncted entities united by something. In this case, the pretext, in a way, to bring them together is today, August 28th, the day of August 28th. So Goethe, Olmsted, Votruba, and King. We have a great poet and great, one of the greatest presences in culture, European culture, then the father of American landscape, or some call him the father of America, of landscape urbanism. And then Votruba, very important Austrian sculptor, and the builder of the Votruba Kirche, or Votruba Church. And then Martin Luther King, who fought for equality and justice, something that still needs a fight for, because things are not settled. So I begin with Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. I forgot, I had some images for a project for Faust. Faust being, as you know, a very important writing by him. Anyway, in the rush with which I mean, how would one address Goethe together with other people in a short PowerPoint presentation? It's not easy. Anyway, so this is the man, this was the man, this is the man that Napoleon, when he met him, said, this is a man, in other words, expressed high respect from Napoleon towards Goethe. And he did deserve it, yes. Some even think he was, in a way, the Homo Europaeus par excellence. So I go rather quickly. We'll just talk a little bit about a few of his thoughts in quotations. I mean, it's just an invitation towards exploring more Goethe. That's all there is now here. This is, well, quite a big house, well, restored, of course, because Goethe is Goethe. And the Germans respect him accordingly. So he said this: the world is so empty if one thinks only of mountains, rivers, and cities. But to know someone who thinks and feels with us, who, though distant, is close to us in spirit, this makes the earth for us an inhabited garden. Instruction does much, but encouragement everything. This is what Goethe thought, and I only hope the schools all over the world reflect on these few words by Goethe, because most schools are obsessed with instruction, but not with encouragement. Quite the opposite. Often the professors discourage the students in the name of a truth which is debatable, or knowledge which is debatable. Now, this is another quotation from him. I love those who yearn for the impossible. And I love the one who says so, because again, and I do have a war with the schools in general, because I think schools, especially those that claim that they prepare for the market, know nothing about the impossible. They only prepare slaves. They don't prepare free people. While Goethe, not only Goethe, Doshi said the same thing. You know, school should give the students the impetus, the desire for the impossible, to open doors, to break barriers. This is what a true education should do. And if we don't listen to Goethe, I don't know you know, if we don't listen to him, we don't listen to anybody, really. Nothing is worth more than this day. Beautiful again. Because what he says here is what the Latins said with carpe diem. And that's what I try in my almost exasperation every day. Why nobody asks me to celebrate, you know, important architects on their birthdays. But I feel time is very, very important. So Goethe says nothing is worth more than this day. And it's true, and I would say even more, nothing is worth more than this second. Every second is important, you know, and carpe diem, which means grasp the moment, grasp the, it is to insert your life very intensely into the very second you are in, to not lose any second, because life is very, very precious. So I agree with him. Nothing is worth more than this day. So let's live in the present. I mean, this came from a man who knew the past very well and had reverence for the past, just as Palladio did, but they belong to the present, to the day, to the round day. Everything is hard before it is easy. So again, these are some quotations, some thoughts of Goethe. This is true again. I can speak from my own experience. It is, you know, I always suspected that it's because of my cursed, you know, zodiac. You know, I'm a so-called balance man, and every time I approach some kind of shore, I panicked, and you know, most of the time I ruined everything. Yes, everything is hard before it is easy. And everything is hard before it, when you arrive closer to some kind of an ending. But it is exactly then when it transforms itself from being hard to being easy. At least this was my experience. We are shaped and fashioned by what we love. True again. You know, this can be said in many ways. Maybe he said it very simply, maybe boringly simply for us, inhabitants of the 21st century. But I think it is true. The connection between who we are and what we do and love is very intricate and true. Music is liquid architecture. Architecture is frozen music. Now, as you know, today, because of the technology we have, we already talk and we already build liquid architecture. In other words, you could say we build directly music. And I have a book published with the works of the students of IOA in Vienna, which was run by Zaha Hadid. And the book is called Fluid Totality. And they actually published two books, Total Fluidity and Fluid Totality. And it is true, the projects that are shown there are very, very fluid and liquid. And many people, well, some people talk today about liquid architecture. But you cannot do liquid architecture with a T-square and rectangle. It's impossible. You have to use other means. The other part of this phrase, you know, architecture is frozen music. And he was not the only one who said this, but maybe he said it the most convincingly, or anyway, being Goethe, he was listened to accordingly. There is strong shadow where there is much light. True again, you know, because the dialectics between shadow and light are very important. So those who only look for light, I think they forget that you cannot have light without shadow. And, you know, they must be considered together, kind of like an yin and yang relationship. There is a strong shadow where there is much light. I agree, and I think you would agree too. Dream no small dreams, for they have no power to move the hearts of men. True again, and again and again, I am mad at the schools that do not teach this the students, and they should, because that's why we have timid people who are unable to express themselves because they have been restricted all along from the first grade to the university, where you are told all the time, this cannot be done, this cannot be done, where did you see this, where did you see that? But again, one of the greatest intellectuals and men of culture in the world, Goethe, says it plainly, dream no small dreams. In other words, be courageous, be creative, make even mistakes, it's okay. Move forward with enthusiasm, with exuberance. Anyway, so dream no small dreams, for they have no power to move the hearts of men. And I'm afraid, you know, my dreams are not so big as I would like them to be. They are probably small dreams because I am unable to move to, they don't have the power to move the hearts of the students in the university here, with a few exceptions, and those exceptions are present today. Difficulties increase the nearer we get to the goal. That's the quotation I was actually referring to a while ago, when I mentioned that for me in my own life, when I was approaching a shore, so to speak, you know, I had a feeling that the apocalypse would come, that everything would, that is the end, because in a way it is an end, but every end is also some kind of a new beginning. So difficulties increase the nearer we get to the goal. And it's true, and this is known, I think, by architecture students. When you do a project, you know, when you are pressed by a deadline and you are very close to accomplish it, and exactly then you have the feeling that is the end of the world. It's very, very difficult to you know, close it off, to end it. One never goes so far as when one doesn't know where one is going. Beautiful again. So what is Goethe saying here? He's saying that when you know, to quote Jean Nouvel, who himself quoted, maybe even Nietzsche, that Jean Nouvel said that I always work with the seriousness of a child that loses himself in his playing. So when you, just like as a painter who begins to paint, but doesn't know where the painting will lead him to, doesn't know where the painting will end and will arrive at, you can do the same in architecture. So Goethe says one never goes so far when one doesn't know where one is going. So when the professor comes to you and looks at your scribbles and your doodles and, you know, ask, where are you going? And you say, honestly, I don't know. And then the professor says, what do you mean you don't know? You are supposed to do this and this and this and this. And then you say, sorry, professor, but Goethe said, one never goes so far as when one doesn't know where one is going. So forgive me, but I cannot ignore Goethe. I think that this is a good strategy to start a project. Without knowing where you will go, you just, you know, with the seriousness of a child who loses himself in his playing, you begin to work and play, play and work. without knowing where you will arrive. And I think Goethe is right. You'll arrive very far by not knowing where you are going. And this is the last quotation from the great man. Remember to live. Beautiful. I mean, in 3 words, and maybe in German there are 2, I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't know German. But in English, remember to live. Because I think, and I myself often forget to live, you know, and it's the most important thing, to live. But what does it mean to live? Because I think to live is not to earn a living. We have the so-called earning a living, and then we have earning one's life. We have to try to earn our lives, not to earn a living. Yes, we all need to earn a living, but more important is to earn one's life. That's what he means by remember to live. And what does it mean to live? Well, to be true to yourself, to your intuitions, to your aspirations, to dream big dreams, to be creative, to be enthusiastic, to have exuberance. This is what it means to live, not to lay on the sofa and watch soap operas. That's not to live. I'm very sorry, but the culture of entertainment is against life. That's why in the United States, there is a saying, and there were even stickers that people placed on cars and so on: turn your TV off, turn your life on. Because watching TV is not living. Let us not have any doubts about it. At the most, you watch other people living, but not you yourself. You are just watching other people living. Anyway, beautiful Goethe, and we thank you. Remember to live. And I should say this to myself every single minute or second or every day. And I think we should all say the same to ourselves. Remember to live. Okay, we go to Frederick Law Olmsted, the father of American landscape architecture, or as some put it, landscape urbanism. Very interesting, because only in connection with him I made these 2 words, landscape urbanism, because that's because he extended, landscaping to the level and dimensions of urbanism. Daniel Burnham, an important architectural presence in the United States, said of him, he paints with lakes and wooded slopes, with lawns and banks and forest-covered hills, with mountainsides and ocean views. Great, I think he said it correctly. So Olmsted, he paints with lakes and wooded slopes, with lawns and banks and forest-covered hills, with mountainsides and ocean views. This was the man, the father of American landscape architecture, who of course didn't study architecture nor landscape architecture, but it just happened that life led him into creating many, many parks, some of very large dimensions. He created many. In fact, he deserves a presentation a few hours long just about his, very vast oeuvre, very vast work. He did many, many important parks for important colleges. I will only show you a few images with Prospect Park in Brooklyn, which I knew firsthand. I crossed it myself on my feet many times, and Central Park in Manhattan. So we start with Central Park in Manhattan, in New York City. You probably know, this park. So it was designed by him, but he had a collaborator or a partner, a British architect. This one, truly an architect, trained as an architect, who immigrated to the States, and they worked together for many years. This was the scheme, so from 1868, they designed. I think Olmsted had genius, He was not trained as an architect or landscape architect, but I think his love for nature and his understanding of the human interventions in nature were very deep and inspired. And look at the roads And I know this very well because, as I said, I crossed this park many times. It's a very fine park. It's very big, it's true. And you see all around the skyscrapers and the tall buildings of Manhattan. But the park is magnificent. And as I said, he is not the only one he did, or they did, because they worked together, these two people. Sorry about this picture, but you saw the previous one. Anyway, this is Central Park. Well, with an old picture, now you have skyscrapers like mushrooms after the rain, you know, popping up all the time, slenderer and slenderer and taller all around it. I like very much you know, the sinuous you know, paths and roads. I think, I mean, even graphically, if you look at this plan, is appealing, is interesting, and is convincing. It has truth, it has beauty, it has modesty even, and it also has courage, because it's a very ample human park, meaning made by man. So here it is. There are projects now. I didn't. I could have developed this, because there are utopian projects now to, you know, visions for the future for Central Park. But the truth is, this park is almost mythical for Manhattan. Is an emblem of the city, and a very important one. And many people, you know, enjoy it. I personally think landscape architecture or landscape design or horticulture even are extremely important today. I think if we create more gardens, more parks, we create a balance between nature and man, which right now is not achieved. As you can see, it's a huge park. But it is at the scale of the city it finds itself in. That is in New York City, that is in Manhattan. Now we go to Prospect Park in Brooklyn, New York. And I know this park very well. Also, it's a smaller park, and Brooklyn is smaller than Manhattan. You can see Manhattan there in the background. So his partner was Vaux. I imagine he was French, but he was born in England, and he formed a partnership with Olmsted. It might be that Vaux, Mr. Vaux, was very important in the firm, but he was always kind of in the shadow of Olmsted, although Olmsted didn't study architecture, but he was well connected, and he had a big persona, and he was a, you know, larger than life personality in a way. A very interesting man, Olmsted. When his brother died, and he wasn't so old, his brother, when he died, he married his wife. The wife of his deceased brother, who had 3 children with his brother, and he adopted them. And I don't know, that was, you know, kind of interesting. Anyway, this is the park. I would place this, you know, this plan on the wall as even as a graphic work. I think it's beautiful. You know, you have the presence of man, but it's a sensitive presence. It's not, he understood, you know, why did he make those roads and paths? They are like, you know, veins in the human body. They are organic, and understanding the you know, the context. It is the work of man, but somehow I think he adapted himself very well to the content, the conditions of the terrain on which he worked. And you know, the lake is artificial, and but look, it's. I think he was a brilliant or they were brilliant. I don't know. Maybe Vo also had a very important input. Whatever, they worked together, and I think they created beautiful parks. And these are just 2 parks out of maybe at least 30, 40 parks, major parks that they created. And this is a scene from Prospect Park, I imagine before the pandemic, but maybe even after the pandemic, people like to enjoy. This is a more expensive area of Brooklyn, you know, Prospect Park, you know, young professionals live here, and the spring is magnificent, as it is magnificent in most places, actually. It's a very nice park. And as you see, people enjoy it. And here you see a view from the air. This building here, where is it? Is the Brooklyn Library, which I went to many times. Half of my life I spent in the second-hand bookstores, and the other half in libraries. So talking about remember to live, I didn't quite remember to live. You know, I was more like a library's mouse or something like this. Anyway, but on my way to the library, I was on the bicycle. So I crossed this park many times on the bicycle. And one day on this road here, I had an accident with my only car, the only car I ever had and I will ever have. And I drove it without a driving license. I never got a driving license. Can you imagine? I lived for many years in the States. I never had a driving license. And for 1 year, about 1 year, I bought a car in a moment of madness. I began to drive it without a driving license. I was never able to pass the exam. I failed it twice, and I had an accident. And one day I was on this street here, and there were people coming out of the church, Afro-Americans dressed beautifully in the doorways of their buildings. And I drove my car with extreme care. And at one moment I hear, you know, this alarming noise, and I was sure I embraced another car, so to speak, which was truly the case. I came too close to a car that was parked, and then I hear behind me an incredible noise, not incredible, it was incredible for me, like a siren. I was convinced one of those people waiting in the doorways, they called the police because they saw the accident. So I was convinced the police was after me. But it was not the police, was an ambulance. And then I drove it all the way through here. I wanted to go, I knew a mechanic who lived somewhere south of this picture. So I drove all the way like this, and I arrived at this, I'm a little bit confused. I think here, and there is I don't know how to call it in terms of driving. Anyway, it was a big adventure. And then I lost myself. I arrived at the mechanic, and then I saw that indeed I ruined a little bit my car. But anyway, a little nostalgia. I'll tell you more about my adventures with the car one day. Okay, so we move forward to Friez Votruba, a very important sculptor, and he even gave the name of the Institute for Architecture, where Zaha Hadid taught for 20 years almost, and where she created those 2 books with the projects of students. I told you about fluid totality and total fluidity. Well, Votruba, the street on which this building is of Institute of Architecture is called the Friez Votruba Alley. So this was the man of Hungarian, I think Czechoslovakian, you know, he had some roots in Hungary and Czechoslovakia, but he was born, I think, in Austria, in Vienna. And he built this church, which together with the buildings of what's his name? I feel like saying now Hans Meyer, of Bogdan, if you are here, please help me. I have problems. Anyway, he was the sculptor and the painter. They both built in Vienna. And I still don't understand how Ai Weiwei, a painter, an artist, was allowed to build in China, and Votruba, Sculptor, was allowed to build in Vienna. And, you know, so there are artists who can build in their countries, but not in our country. In our country, you know, if you don't have the right for signature, you cannot build. So Votruba would not have built this very interesting church, or Kirche in German, that he built. This was the model for the church, and it's on a hill. You have to climb a little bit to arrive to it, but this is the church. This is the church of the sculptor Friez Votruba. And as I said, he died on the 28th of August, but he left something behind him. The building is not, in my opinion, as interesting inside as it is from the outside. But remember, I mean, not remember, but he built this building before deconstruction. So if he built it, let's say in the 90s, you would have said, sure, a deconstructivist building. No, he built it 30 years earlier. So there. Artists usually, it has been said that poets are always right. Well, artists, if they are good, they have intuitions, you know, and sometimes they have premonitions even. Anyway, we have to appreciate a city like Vienna, which, you know, invested faith, yes, they allowed him to build something like this. So Goethe was born on the 28th of August. Olmsted died on the 28th of August. Votruba died on the 28th of August. And we are on the 28th of August. It's an interesting building. And you can see, you know, so-called common people, you know, coming from the church service. And, you know, I think people accept even so-called avant-garde buildings. You know, you just have to be allowed to build in a certain way. And I think people, you know, accommodate themselves. I don't think human beings are so, they should be allowed to face alternative ways of, you know, cultural gestures, let's say. They built something recently. So this is a rather recent picture, because as you see here, and I have another picture, they built, I don't know exactly what it is, but they built an addition very recently. When I was there last year, it was still during construction. This is the interior, and I have pictures even with myself here taken, but I don't know where they are, but we took some pictures here. We have been a few times with the students here. Bravo to Votruba. That's all I can say. And bravo to the city of Vienna and to the people of Vienna, who understand that culture needs freedom. It needs freedom, and we need to trust the artists, to give them our trust and our encouragements, and they can do wonders. You see, this is the addition here at the bottom. Maybe it's a touristic, because many people, you know, visit the building now. Anyway, so this was Friez Votruba, the Austrian sculptor. And now we go to Martin Luther King. Why? He didn't die on this day. He was not born on this day. But on this day, the 28th of August, 1963, he had a powerful speech in front of 250,000 people. So 250,000 people gathered in Washington, D.C. to hear him talk. And he delivered this, I don't have here the whole talk, I just have a fragment, known as I Have a Dream. And I think we should read these words ourselves, maybe display them on the wall of our room, and not forget them, because I think all of us should have dreams, and all of us should fight for our dreams, for what we believe in. Otherwise, we forget to live, in reference to Goethe. So sorry for the M that is missing. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech in Washington, D.C. during the height of the American Civil Rights Movement in August 28th, 1963. So almost 60 years ago, 57 years ago. More than 250,000 people came to hear him speak. And since then, the speech has become one of the most famous orations in history and still touches the hearts of so many. Here he is, and the ocean of people is right in front of him. And unfortunately, he was assassinated not much later. Last night I read about it, but in itself is a very sad story and kind of complex. Anyway, yes, unfortunately, people like him have adversaries in the world. You know, often they are killed, they disappear. Well, Weiwei doesn't disappear and is not killed, and I'm happy he's not killed and he doesn't disappear. But some less lucky disappear. Also, you know, if they have the misfortune to have a different color of the skin, maybe that helps in the, you know, in the negative sense, that they might disappear or they might, and you know already from the news that things didn't improve, that the United States at this very moment is fighting segregation and discrimination. And it's a big problem. But people like him fought for a change. Here is the man, and I found today, maybe I'll write something called Martin Luther King as a child, a very nice picture with him as a young boy. Anyway, look at it. You know, Washington, D.C., it's a sea of people there, you know, and it moves me because if I look at this picture and I see the exuberance that I would love to be able to stir up in people, at least, you know, at our micro level of, you know, education in architecture. And I don't succeed, you know, it is like we cannot wake them up, you know, and I don't know, I can't, maybe other people can. But Martin Luther King was able to do this, and you can see it's a very impressive picture. And look at them. Isn't it beautiful? Isn't it beautiful what people can do when they unite, when they are together? You know, it moves me because it shows this unity, this togetherness that breaks the barriers between me and you, breaks the barriers between the individual and society, breaks barriers and says yes to life. And, you know, if you are not moved by such a picture, I don't know what moves you. I have a dream, and now just a few quotations from this famous speech that Martin Luther King gave, a fragment. And so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. That American dream, which was betrayed many times and continues to be betrayed. As a dream, the American dream is beautiful. Unfortunately, the American dream is killed by excessive mercantilism, excessive obsession with, well, any obsession is excessive, sorry for the redundancy, with money, and Martin Luther King protested, trying to bring back human values at the fore. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. Well, we are talking about the country with the biggest discrepancies between people. There are people immensely rich and there are people immensely poor. And this is not in accordance with you know, the basic meaning of the American dream, and it is not in accordance with Martin Luther King. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves, yes, slaves, America, which claims that is showing the light to the world, had slavery until almost recently and still does, in a hidden way, but still does. The sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. Beautiful. So this is a forgiving man, himself maybe the son of a former slave, who understood that the son of the former slave owner and the son of the former slaves could be actually friends and understand their oneness, their togetherness. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. Do you know that Olmsted himself, after visiting the South, I'm talking about the father of landscape architecture, he himself wrote, rather in a less exalted way, but he wrote against slavery, because slavery is unacceptable. What gives the right to one human being to enslave another human being? What? I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. True again, and unfortunately forgotten again, and forgotten at the highest level in that very country in which Martin Luther King talked. I have a dream today. That very day, that very today, Goethe referred to when he said, you know, today is very, very important. I have a dream today, not tomorrow, not yesterday, today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. Unlike Kanye West, who made a video where he replaced the waiters and the waitresses at a table where there were only black people, you know, a very luxurious table, and the waiters and the waitresses were white. So he replaced, in a way, one hatred with another, an injustice with another. No, Martin Luther King says it clearly, black boys and black girls will join hands with little white boys and white girls. That's very different, as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed and all flesh shall see it together. So again, it is an invitation to equality, to togetherness. And unfortunately, we are still unable to realize it. Even at the level of our own lives and even in academic lives, we forget that we should all be one. And this should go also for those who lead certain schools, who claim that they deserve the red carpet and then different entrance in the school and different, anyway, let me not get into it. People who study here, they know what I'm referring to. It's, if we don't realize what Martin Luther King advocated, we have the unfortunate chance, I'm sarcastic for using the word chance, to not live life at the fullest, unfortunately. Okay, thank you. So if you are still here and if you still have some patience, I can show you the works of the Med architects. But let me see first if you are still here, some of you. You are. So if you want, I made this presentation before and maybe 1 or 2 people here heard me talk about Med architects, but maybe not more than 1 or 2. So I will show, because this was my promise and it connects with Weiwei. Thank you, Diana, for teaching me how to pronounce his name, because I was never able to until today. So I begin now with Med architects. I admire them for their courage, for their level of experimentation, although lately I think they are a little bit carried away by their success, and I think they are less convincing in their very latest works. But they still accomplished a lot, and they are still young. So they are remarkable. I call this presentation Mad, Happy, Mad, because I played with the name of their firm, because I think any kind of intense creativity approaches some kind of madness, and but also some kind of happiness. So when you are very, very creative, you have a chance to be very, very happy, even in a so-called mad way. So mad, happy, mad. The Chinese, first I will show you a few things from traditional art in China, because although Ma Yan-song, the founder of this firm, is considered a futurist, not in the sense of Marinetti's futurism, but in the sense of doing futuristic architecture, he actually claims he's a traditionalist. We'll see. But the Chinese word for landscape is shanshui, from the combination of shan and shui, respectively mountains and water. And here the overall natural result is expressed through the combination of the solidity of matter with the fluidity of liquid, reflecting, as in all Chinese culture, the dichotomy of yin and yang. Shanshui is also a style of traditional painting that depicts picturesque landscapes with granite peaks that emerge from the clouds and blend into a changing landscape of pine trees and streams. China has a great chance and privilege that it has a very old culture, and in this respect, you know, is very, very rich. And if it knows how to connect with its very rich cultural past and even spiritual past, China would be unstoppable. It's already kind of unstoppable. How do you explain that this country stopped the coronavirus? No other country was able to, and they did it. And I think they did it, although, you know, there are suspicions that, you know, some of the, you know, statistics coming from there are not correct. But I know they already have sports events where people are allowed to attend, you know, large crowds. So I think something works. And anyway, I don't want to exalt. I'm sure they had problems and they still have problems. But their old culture and their old spirituality is, you know, more than convincing. So you see in these old, you know, paintings, the mountain, the granite, and the water, or the fog, or the sky. So you see nature in its dualities. You have stability, meaning the mountain, the granite, and you have the water, which means fluidity. And Med architects are able to explore this theme in some of their works quite brilliantly. But in many of the traditional landscape paintings of old China, you see this duality, this dichotomy between the solid and the fluid, between the mountain and the river, or the lake, or the sea. And the mountains are really mountains, and the sea is really sea, and the sky is so. And the house of man is as it is, you know. When I see this little hut here, I remember that I wanted to do once a competition for Paris, for the Palace of Justice, which actually was owned by Renzo Piano, and he built a horrible building in Paris. Anyway, and I wanted to propose not the Palace of Justice, but the Hut of Justice. And I wanted the building just like this one, the most modest little hut on top of a mountain, because I wanted to build a hill, actually, not a mountain, with excavated earth from adjacent building sites. And on top of it, to have such a little hut like this one, with an old man there distributing justice to whoever wanted to go there, as opposed to 11,000 lawyers which inhabit the huge machinery called the Palace of Justice. So again, against the Palace of Justice, the Hut of Justice. And I actually learned that this was the myth of Saint Louis in Paris, because Saint Louis was also distributing justice. And that's why the effigy of Saint Louis is in any courtroom or Palace of Justice in France. Anyway, sorry for this side dish. Again, a few more paintings of traditional Chinese old painting showing, mountains representing stability and water representing instability. This is Ma Yan-song. Ma Yan-song, this young, still young architect who studied in the United States at Yale. Then he went to Zaha Hadid, worked there a little bit, and then he went back to China and started this firm that is immensely successful now, one of the best known architecture firms in the world. He doesn't look very happy, but this is his persona, I guess. But I like him. He's obviously a little bit mad. It's okay, it's fine. We need creative people. Doesn't matter how bad. And I love this picture. I have to tell you, I would look at this picture non-stop, 24 hours a day. Here are three young architects. The two on the right are his partners now, because the firm grew so much that he couldn't handle it any longer alone. But I think they are beautiful. The one on the right is beautiful. The one in the middle is beautiful. The one on the left is beautiful in a different way. These three young people should be an encouragement to anyone who has any ambition in architecture to create, that it is possible. They tell us that it is possible, but, and this is a big but, not B-U-T-T, but B-U-T. The man on the left and also his partners understood that without digital technology at the highest level, they cannot achieve what they achieved. So they are extremely knowledgeable, and they are in the front line of architecture in this field. So maybe this is what Ma Yan-song understood in the office of Zaha Hadid. Yale University is a little bit, I mean, they cultivate the new too, but there is also a conservative side to Yale. Whatever, Ma Yan-song created a firm that is making big waves. And now almost every day you see on Arch Daily or Design or whatever, Design Boom and Bustler.net, news about what these young people do and did. First, the Absolute Towers in Canada, where they were inspired by Marilyn Monroe. At least this is what Ma Yan-song claimed and said. Look at the plans, each floor is different because you have this movement, Again, you cannot do this manually, and you cannot do something like this with a T-square and rectangle. It is impossible. So my advice to students in architecture, learn digital techniques, because we have them, and without them, you cripple yourself. Look what they did, and very young. I think at that time, I don't know, he must have been less than 35. At that time, he was without the other two partners, but they were built and in Canada, and compare them with the other towers. To my taste, I mean, I don't want to be totally uncritical, but I also don't want to spoil the joy of the creativity. They are, for my taste, they are a little bit mundane, a little bit commercial, but still I salute them. And there are views of these two towers that are very moving and inspiring. It's amazing. They did it. We can't even draw this. We cannot draw them because we don't have the tools to draw them. Forget about building them. In order to build them, you need to do very rigorous drawings, and we cannot do them with a primitive technique. It's impossible. And this was just the beginning. You know, they have buildings now that are much more adventurous than this, as if these were not already adventurous. Here, I don't know, maybe he's praying there, or I don't know what he's doing, and I don't even know if it's him, whatever. This is the model of the towers. And this is the man, my Song. He lectures in the world, and it's beautiful. When you practice architecture at the highest level, at the most adventurous and creative, it's very rewarding, you know, and doors open, and you know, we need that kind of emancipation. We cannot be content with being timid and you know, architecture is beautiful when it is an adventure. And this man understood this. And he came with a handicap, or probably he was from a well-to-do family. I mean, how many Chinese study at Yale? It doesn't matter. He did something, he earned his life. And he's earning his life with his two other beautiful partners and with his whole office, actually. And by the way, they hire. So, but if you get a job, they expect to work very, very hard, because they work very, very hard. In general, the Chinese are very, very hardworking. Otherwise, they would not have achieved what they achieved. But look at these curves, you know, they are magical, you know, they are done with geometry, but betray geometry in a certain way, in the name of life. I like particularly this picture. So as I said, he claimed that he was inspired by Marilyn Monroe. He probably fell in love with Marilyn Monroe and you know, the movement of her body, and he abstracted that beauty into these towers. Now the Ordos Museum in China, another architectural adventure. Of course, other people work in this way these days, but they were some of the, you know, the earliest who did that, some of the first ones. And again, without a certain technology and the capacity to draw and to conceive such a project, you wouldn't be able to build it. It's impossible. So we have here again, you know, that liquid, you know, liquidity that Goethe talked about, to an extent, at least to an extent. I like this picture where you have, you know, traditionally dressed people, even with an animal, entering and being inside of a building that, you know, would have made probably even Zaha Hadid smile. You know, it's, again, how come that this former communist country, and it had the most stringent and the most rigid and the most frightening form of communism, look what they do now. And it's not the only building. They open their doors to so many Western architects. And I know it's a strategy, and maybe, you know, we can debate a little bit about this, but the fact remains, they build these buildings. And even Alvaro Siza said, you know, the Chinese are very, very, they do quality work, although in terms of gadgets, what is made in China perhaps doesn't have the highest reputation. But maybe in the art of building, they are more maybe concerned with detail and a certain quality of construction than in some other countries. Maybe in Alvaro Siza's case, Portugal, I don't know. But how many museums in the world would allow some peasants to enter with an animal? You know, I don't think too many. Look at the top. Look at the buildings seen from the top. You know, it's, again, you don't have the technology to draw this. You cannot do it. You can make a sketch, of course, freehand, but you cannot do rigorous drawings to be able to build it. On the other hand, I like very much the traditional costumes of these people. You know, So there isn't really a contradiction between, you know, the most traditional tradition and the most avant-garde. In a way, they meet halfway, in a way, sometimes. I mean, even the building seen here on the right seems to be interesting. Truly, China is still, I mean, I don't know about after the pandemic, but before the pandemic, it was a big lab, experimental lab in the field of architecture. Well, an animal and the building somehow is not far away from what we see here. I mean, even the structure, you know, you need generous engineers to work with. And if you exalt in the engineers the same desire you have for enhanced creativity, then a beautiful collaboration could happen. But if the engineer is as timid as you are, and you are both full of fear instead of full of love, and love of life and love of creativity, then the result can only be, you know, banal. Now, the cultural center, this is in a way the masterpiece until now, although they are creating others at this very moment, or at least this is, I think, one of their most accomplished buildings, and you probably know it, it was extensively published, is this one. You know, kind of an opera, big opera at the edge, the outskirts of the city. And I think it's brilliant. Maybe, you know, some say it's not as complex as it might appear. Well, you know, I understand in a way why one would say something like this, but we cannot acknowledge the obvious qualities and you know, the perfection of the execution, and even in a way the perfection of the conception. In a way, it's very simple, yes, but on the other hand, you know, if I am to build this, I couldn't. I confess to my shame, I couldn't, because I don't have the tools to make drawings that can be transformed into a building. I can make a sketch on a napkin, I can, but it's not enough. I mean, look at this interior, you know. You have to know how to externalize through drawings these visions. At this moment, China is more adventurous in the field of architecture than the United States, and probably the most adventurous in the world. In fact, I read in a newspaper that a British architect said, we cannot do in England what the Chinese do in China. Because in England, any client would have objections, while in China, they would accept anything. They would say yes to anything. They don't comment, they don't oppose, they don't arrest your exuberance, which is magnificent. And soon they might not need any longer Western architects, because they have already excellent schools of architecture in China, and they have obviously plenty of people to choose from. So they already have their own architects. But for a while, yes, they invited architects from other countries, you know, more or less famous, but most of them famous. I mean, it is amazing what they built in a very short time, literally, you know, 20, 30 years at the most. I mean, what is this, you know? Look at it, you know, it's again, some kind of magic, architecturally speaking. So there is Weiwei, there are many other firms, and I see almost daily on Arch Daily new creations coming from China, and I'm particularly interested to see how they develop the rural culture of their country, because there are incredible riches, and they have so many thousands and thousands of abandoned old villages. And those are beautiful. I know because I have books on them, and they are very, very beautiful. Now the China Wood Sculpture Museum, which is also an interesting building, quite big and quite different from the buildings behind it. This is also twisted, because to twist a building today is almost a commandment. It's part of the day. We twist things. I have a PowerPoint presentation called Twisted Architectures. And in essence, they found a piece of wood, and you'll see it. And they created this building that is not very dissimilar from that piece of wood, and is the wood museum. Even the function of the building is nice. No, the wood museum, although it is quite metallic, but it's okay. And you see these people who not too long ago, they were dressed in uniforms, and they were reading the little red books, and they were extremely poor. They accommodate themselves to very, in a way, forward-looking architectural statements, and to an extent we could call them, at least to an extent, avant-garde buildings. It's fine. Just as in Russia at the beginning of the 20th century, you had the most outrageous forward-looking architects and artists. And, there were many problems then in Russia at the beginning of the 20th century, poverty and lack of education, of culture. So you can create the new even in adverse conditions, maybe even better in adverse conditions. Sorry for these are very nice cross sections, but the image is maybe not very, at least not for my eyes and my eyeglasses. Maybe you see, I hope you see better. Here you see them better, a little better. You see, it's an organic building. It's this twist brings in life, brings in that accident that makes things, exuberant and unexpected, unpredictable, meaning alive. They must have been very, very, pleased to see the fruit of their labor, become reality. That's the piece of wood right here. And this was an initial sketch, so the building approximates somehow this piece of wood, and it became the museum. Here it is. In a way, it's a defaced building inside, because you see the structure, and from at least in some parts of the building, and it's okay, it's fine. Now, this is a village that is was constructed, is a little bit, for my taste, a little bit less unpredictable, and just a little bit somehow for me, but I could be wrong. This is my perception. A little bit commercial, but it's fine. And it also has something Chinese, because like you see here, there are also almost approximations of being pagoda-like a little bit. And, quite ample works. I mean, these young people are amazing. They build a lot in a country that is open to their ideas and capable of building what they dream. I have some problems, it's true, with this glass, kind of predictable and excessive and not very concerned with loss of energy. But this is also done by big. It's, this is in a way some kind of a mainstream architecture. But in their best works, I think they go a little bit beyond being just mainstream. I mean, for most architects, first of all, in the United States, a young architect will never be able to build just one building like this. Forget about building a whole complex of them or a village. No. You know, I know young architects, very talented, they studied at great schools, and they just move some rock walls from one side of the building to another. So they do some interior alterations, but not to arrive at this kind of mega constructions when they are very young. No way, even older. So China was, and I believe it will continue to be a playground for adventurous architecture and architects. Despite the fact that the government says enough with the extravagant buildings, we have to, because I've heard, I read there are such statements coming from the government, but the country is so huge and is so rich now that anything can still happen. They cannot control everything there. Now, of course, the divine nature is the divine nature. You know, if you ask me if I prefer this to the buildings, I would say I prefer this in terms of beauty. But you know, we need buildings, I guess, in the world. Again, I have some problems with this continuous glass here on the walls, but otherwise it's not a bad work. And you'll see soon a very interesting picture where an old man has in the background this village by mad architects, and this one. He's from a different world. He's from the old China, and behind is the new China. And you have this juxtaposition between the old and the new. And they can coexist, actually. Just as those peasants with the animal coexisted with the museum they entered, this man is, although he has his back towards this, I wonder what he thinks, what he thought. This would have been unimaginable in Mao's time. And you see, life is full of surprises. I'm sure he would not have expected it. Now, this is an interesting work, and it's interesting because here you have two kind of, smaller skyscrapers or towers that in a way connect to those traditional old Chinese paintings that I showed at the beginning. They are so very different from, I mean, look at them, from other towers. And they do resemble those, you remember those granite mountains, those, symbols of stability, of nature in the proximity of water, sea, rivers, whatever. They build these towers, they have something, I mean, the one on the right almost seems like a silhouette, a human silhouette, with the head a little bit lowered. They are not banal, and they are black, and they are so very different from, look at the building on the right, and look at what they did. So truly, I think my Song was correct. He might be seen as, his work might be seen as being futuristic, but it's also anchored, at least anchored, rooted in the old culture of his own country. And this building on the right is neither futuristic nor connected with the past. It's actually dead. It's banal. It doesn't matter how correctly it was built. But this one, you see, what we see here is the difference between culture and civilization. Alvar Aalto said, and I keep saying this to myself and to others, architecture belongs to culture, not to civilization. This one belongs to civilization. These two belong to culture, because they connect to the spirit of the place, they connect to the culture of the place, while this one doesn't. This one is imported from, this tower could be or could have been anywhere in the world. These two less so, these belong to China. And in this sense, it's remarkable what Med architects were able to do. Because it's very difficult, particularly for this kind of project. And remember the towers they built in Canada, the Marilyn Monroe towers. Very different from these two. These two are imbued with a different spirit, and that's because they built in China. And it's a different kind of architectonic mentality, if I can call it so. They are different from any other building that I see here in this picture. And they are different because they do not neglect, despite or in spite of appearances, their own past, the cultural past of the very old and rich cultural past of China. Bravo to them. And look, I mean, how many skyscrapers or towers seen from the top look like this? I don't know of any other, really. Sorry. Now the urban forest, this is a project it was not built, but one day they will build it, maybe tomorrow, because they are very fast. And again, you know, you might not agree, and I might not agree myself with everything I see here, but you cannot do something like this unless you know the language of today, and that is, you know, the digital language. Now, they began the construction on the mountainous, this sports campus in China, which is huge, is this one. Look at this. They are building it. Maybe it's already built because I had this PowerPoint presentation prepared a little more than 1 year ago. Just this, it's a stadium. Just this, like the bird's nest in China is about that size. But look what else they have here. So here we have Olmsted plus Herzog and de Meuron and Weiwei. They are together in this work by Med architects, those three beautiful young architects who make us tremble with desire to do something similar, not ad literam, but in terms of creativity and exuberance and, you know, courage. It's big, as you can tell, and they are doing it. Maybe it's already done. I have to develop to bring this presentation up to date. It stops, and I ask for forgiveness because I do not show his very, very latest works. And in a way, it's good that I don't show them because I have seen a few works, and my feeling is the intensity and the authenticity of their creativity seems to be a little bit, it seems to me to be a little bit less convincing lately. Maybe because there is such a risk, you know, when you are very successful to get carried away by success and you know, and also by the multitude of projects you are doing, so the quality of the work might suffer. I hope this is not the case, but what I saw very recently didn't convince me so much. I didn't see yet pictures of this as being built. I imagine they are progressing on it. And, you know, China builds amazingly quickly, you know, maybe not in 10 days, like that hospital in Wuhan, but maybe 12 days. I'm joking. They build fast. So here architecture became landscape, and landscape became architecture. And I think Olmsted would have loved it. Look at the plan. So again, just this is Weiwei and Herzog and de Meuron. All the others are Olmsted plus Med architects. The Living Garden. This project disappointed me and disappoints me. I saw it was published these days, maybe yesterday even, in the Zine and maybe in an Arch Daily. Oh, no, sorry. It's not this one. This is a pavilion but will arrive at their work in the States, in California. This one is actually very close to the bird's nest, that stadium that Diana showed us. You see it above, and it's very, very well executed. The pavilion as well. It's a small construction, but it's very convincing and very, very well built. This one has something of Eduardo Torroja to an extent. And it's interesting, this, you know, meeting between the bird's nest and their pavilion in this picture. These Chinese, they can build anything. Look at the solar panels, you know, they're all different. You know, I mean, they are not standardized solar panels because the surface requires, you know, so again, without digitalization, this would be impossible to do. Now, this is a work in Japan. They build now in other parts of the world, including in Japan, and the relationship between China and Japan was not very friendly, as you know. They created here something very interesting. It's a sum of kind of a collage of different interiors, but one in particular is very, very moving because it's very surreal. So they are good at the relationship between theater and architecture. Of course, the mountains are as beautiful in China. Nature never lets us down. It is beautiful everywhere in the world, in fact. We can learn a lot from nature. And Doshi said, you know, that Le Corbusier told him to always try to make a pact with nature. And unfortunately, often we do not do this. But in Asia, I think people understand better the relationship between the work of man and the work of God or nature. I wonder, this is Mayan song? Might be. Anyway, cutting the red ribbon. This I like, and there are some pictures, I think the next ones with some people inside. This one and the next one, and I think it's magical. Because here you have the so-called real and the so-called fantastic almost perfectly intertwined and together. So it's real, but in the same time it's dreamy, you know. It's architecture and surrealism united with the simplest means in a way. But so you can create architecture that is very, very appealing and stimulating without actually doing too much. If you have the inspired or the appropriate idea. So they transform this trail into what you saw. Now we see this was not built, as far as I know until now, a conference center. You know, is in the spirit of some other works that you already saw. I don't even know if it looks so convincing, this rendering, that I'm beginning to believe that it was actually built. Mayan song, and he stated, and he's invited to lecture at AA and at Bartlett and important schools, and he says the same thing. Architects must take risks and must push forward the frontiers of architecture. And I think he's right. Although, of course, on the other hand, the climate change and the pandemic and all kinds of issues confront us with limits. But I think the human being, in all our fragility, I think our imagination can envision ways of still being very creative, even in difficult or adverse conditions. Imagination is very important, and I think Einstein was right when he said imagination is more important than knowledge. If by knowledge you mean, you know, just an accumulation of information or data. Yes, imagination is more important. Sorry for this, a little bit low resolution. Anyway, this one was finalized, and I saw it published a day or two in the zine, I think, and it disappoints me. It's a little bit too mundane and looks artificial. It looks actually better here during the construction when it's not finalized. Then, but this is also kind of mainstream. Su Fujimoto also proposed, at least for Paris, a village on top of a monolithical larger building like here, you know, an office building. So it's some kind of a revenge of the village and the revenge of greenery. You know, you put the trees on top of the building, and you could also place the little village or a cluster of buildings, just like Med Architects did. This was finalized and it was published, as I said, very recently, yesterday or the day before yesterday. But I like it more during the construction because it's still open-ended, and I like open-ended things. Like this looks okay from the top, but otherwise what I saw as being done, I have some questions about it. Anyway, it's their first work in California. They're also building a huge museum for the creator of Star Wars, big museum, very, very big building and big investment. They won that competition as well for George Lucas. Now the fake hills in this was also built, and here you see only a fragment from what they proposed, but the others might have been built by now. Here again, I see a certain humor that is very close to a certain kind of mundanity that leaves me a little bit cold. But again, I admire the fact that, you know, the Chinese are very open to all kinds of experiments, and these young architects go for it. It was built. This is not a, you know, it was built, just what you see. They build anything, really. They have no problem building anything. You see, his statement, my young song, some people may say my work is futuristic, but I see it as traditional. Great. He's both, actually. And he even envisioned furniture for Mars. He's both. And he's very lucky to be rooted in the old traditions of his culture. But he doesn't remain trapped there. That's what this man does. He's rooted there, but his head is in the clouds, close to the stars. This is the Lucas Museum. They released the construction, broke ground already in Los Angeles. Look at this, you know. Funnily, he considered himself, you know, a traditionalist. Well, traditionalist is this building, which is dead. But not this one. This one is a spaceship. This one is a spaceship ready to take off. All the other buildings here are, you know, kind of amorphous and, you know, rigid and morose and dead. Particularly this very, you know, banal, I would say, stadium, you know, uncreative stadium. But their building is very different. And it's being built. Bravo to them. It pays to take risks. And now you see some furniture, and I think we are approaching the end of this presentation. You see some furniture actually for Mars. done by, and it's called the series Mad Martian by Ma Yan-song. And it was exhibited in a gallery. Of course, they didn't yet bring these pieces to Mars. When you have so much success and you build so much, then you'll have the money and the resources to experiment, to do all kinds of things. They even offer a fellowship in architecture. So this young man understands that other young people in architecture need encouragement, and he's helping some of them to travel with a fellowship that his firm, his company offers. So Mad Martian, Ma Yan-song. I think we need more of this so-called madness. Plato, the great Greek philosopher, said there are 4 kinds of madness. One, of course, is to be in love. Second is to be a poet. Third is to be a prophet. And the 4th one is to be clinically mad. And I think without some form of madness, well, hopefully without that, the 4th one, the clinical madness, but they are related in a way. To be a prophet, to be a poet, to be in love, and to be a little bit clinically mad, they are related. But if you are in love, if you have prophet-like tendencies, if you are a poet, you can allow yourself even a touch of so-called clinical madness, because all of them are ingredients in high creativity. And just as children are offsprings of love, great artworks and great architecture are offsprings of a great love for architecture and for culture. Bravo to them. I really think these people, and people like them, because they are not the only ones, of course, but people like them push forward the hope in life and open new horizons of hope. We need that hope, maybe particularly these days when we are confronted with problems, as we know. And you see here the yin and yang of reality and reflection. And about this, Jean-Luc Godard, the great Swiss film director, talked very, very subtly and correctly, I would say, that the imaginary or the reflection, you know, sometimes is more real than the real. So maybe not accidentally, this picture shows both. I call the reflection, in my own way and maybe imperfectly, the metaphysics of architecture. What is the shadow? You know, the shadow is not considered as being real, but it depends how we look at it. We need both. We need the physical and we need the metaphysical. That's it. Thank you very much. There are still 5 people here. I thank you. And I have to do something to increase a little bit the number of people who can bear with me longer, but what can I do? Maybe I'm not convincing enough. Let me see who is still here. Echo is here, Daliana is here. There is only one Romanian, of course. The others deserted. The others don't have the, you know, I don't know what is missing, the patience or the nerve or the madness to be here until the end. I should take a picture of this because it's very telling. Of 6 people, you know, 4 people are not from the country I'm talking from, and well, maybe some of, but no, maybe 1 or 2 participated in a presentation that I already made about mad architects, but the others didn't.